even flow. Thoughts arrive like Blenderstyle, the show where we discuss an extreme blend of music. On this episode, Pearl Jam 10, released in 1991. Cheers, gentlemen.
Cheers.
Cheers.
This is Pearl Jam's debut album, and one of the first CDs I ever bought. And this has been, it's a favorite of mine, and it's come up over and over again at pivotal points in my life where I kind of like rediscover it and get into it again. And I've been kind of holding it back because I didn't want Casey to dunk on like one of my, but now I'm like emotionally shielded enough. I'm like, if he shits on it, I'm not going to cry.
Yeah, okay.
So here we are, Pearl Jam 10. I know we all know it.
Why would I shit on this?
You hate grunge. Watch our Nirvana preview.
That's one thing I'm going to get out of the way right off the bat. I don't think this is a grunge album.
What?
This is a grunge-influenced album, or a album that influenced the grunge movement, but I don't see this as a grunge album.
I think that it has definitely...
It has the grunge tones.
I think it definitely has a 70s feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely think it has a Jimi Hendrix feel to it even.
Exactly.
I would agree with that.
Led Zeppelin, so even early, like, I feel like, for sure, this is a classic rock record with a
grunge
grungy
undertone.
So is it Eddie Vedder that makes it grunge? Because that's where, like, once he started doing that vocal style, everyone...
Maybe, but...
Nirvana doesn't sound like that.
But Nirvana has a completely different sound than Pearl Jam. Pearl Jam has a polish to it that Nirvana doesn't.
And so does Soundgarden.
Exactly.
And all these bands are grunge.
But Soundgarden, I don't think was grunge in their late. I think maybe their early album might have been more grungy than their later stuff.
Okay, so this
maybe.
is why we have a show, right? It's easy for us to have a conversation with somebody on the street or somebody quick, you know, having some beers. You're like, oh yeah, grunge, blah, blah, blah. But when you really dissect it and you really get into it, Alice in Chains is not a grunge band.
Oh, they're metal
Soundgarden
almost.
is not a grunge band.
Right.
Paw isn't a grunge band. Like, but this stuff got lumped in because I think rock was just such a big thing, and news writers and interview MTV people knew how to call it grunge. You know, grunge sold, so that's how it.
Yeah.
It definitely has grunge undertones with like fashion and like definitely his vocals and stuff like that.
And it's from Seattle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this came from like the band Mother Love Bone, which I wasn't a fan into. I wasn't into like grunge.
Dude, they were so good.
Oh yeah?
No, I never listened to them.
Bummer. Their singer died from an overdose, unfortunately.
Seems to be a trend.
And then I can never say the guy's name. Jeff and Stone went on to form Pearl Jam.
Okay.
And they found Eddie Vedder and surfing in San Diego or some shit.
His hair makes me think he was a surfer.
He had to audition for it and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think he had a demo tape or something like that. And they just got together and made this album. I don't even... And
that's what it sounds like.
It's almost
like,
live. In some parts, it felt very organic.
Well, it definitely sounds like the band is on one trip and he's on another. You know what I mean? Vocally.
Yeah.
Like, I think he's definitely more experimental than what the actual music is kind of doing at times. Like, the chord progression, like I said, it sounds like Jimi Hendrix at times and stuff. So, like, I hear nothing too new with it, you know what I mean? I see like definitely an evolution that's coming, especially with this band Pearl Jam. But because of Eddie Vedder, this is kind of, to me, a standout performance. And
this is something I've been thinking about a lot, is like, we talk about bands that don't sound different. You can't, it's all, like you're saying, it's always an evolution. It's going to be like minimal changes, and then some band gets it right, and that spawns a whole new thing.
Well, I think Pearl Jam got something right, especially with this, because it was just some energy of these two entities coming together, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's 10, you know?
So there was an interview done later on in their careers where the band expressed they were dissatisfied with the sound of this album.
I've heard
and that it wasn't what they were going for. And kind of to touch on where you were at,
I
feel like,
know that.
Was that a result of Eddie Vedder coming in and him having all this energy and emotion behind it, to where all this extra post-production went on in the mixing stage? Because I read somewhere that they came in and did additional guitar solos and additional dubbing and stuff on the guitars and the musical side, just to make it sound fuller to maybe match his voice.
Well, I think these are also pretty much renditions, if not the same songs for Mother Love Bone.
Oh, okay.
So some of these songs are, in this Pearl Jam record. And so
really?
Eddie Vedder came along after a lot of these songs were already made.
Really?
And you could definitely tell that they gave him probably free range on this,
Like,
you know what I mean? And
It was like it's almost like an experiment. Like this guy's just going over the top. You know what I mean?
yeah. Well, it almost even sounds like he hasn't figured these songs out yet on this.
Right?
Like
He's just like,
still to this day, I have no idea what he's saying sometimes.
What are you
and then
talking
I
about?
look up what he's saying on some of it.
You don't understand the lyrics to Even Flow?
The lyric sheets are just a bunch of question marks.
But there's obviously videos.
The
on YouTube.
SNL bit where they make fun of him, dude.
Oh, dude.
So he has this like vocal style that it's kind of hit or miss for some people. I think most people like Eddie Vedder that are into modern rock.
I think he does a great job of like portraying an angst kind of feeling with his vocals. Like there's a lot of power behind it, but I kind of get where you're coming from. There's a almost like a drunken slurry word thing going on at times.
Yeah, and he's just like, just random notes and shit.
Yeah,
I think
he
he's
just
just a
throws it.
madman at this time.
Oh,
I think
maybe.
him at his age, at what he was doing at the time,
Totally.
everything is going into this. And like around this time, as all young men, you're just kind of finding yourself and being fucking weird, especially if you're dabbling in music,
Well, yeah, especially when you're trying to make a name for yourself in a flooded market at the time.
Yeah, well, the thing is Pearl Jam is also known to be like tear down their publicity. Anytime they get popular, they're like, no. They stopped doing
reject the
music
singles.
videos. They stopped doing it. They didn't even do interviews for many, many years. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, but that was later on in their career.
Well,
that was
they want.
Well, no, it's.
Oh, really?
I mean, it's later on, but not very short after. I think the next album they came out with is a year after this.
I
That's
honestly
pretty
don't
soon.
know. I've never listened to any Pearl Jam after this.
Oh, they all go.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, they got
That's kind
some
of the feeling I
songs that
got.
are pretty good. Is it "Do the Evolution"?
I have no
There's
idea.
always
The
good songs on
Evo-
Pearl Jam, but
oh.
it's
Oh, yeah, I mean-
every album gets progressively worse than the one before.
So going back to what I said, it's kind of like these two entities coming together and
yes,
making this big old spark, and then after that, it
it
just kinda
fizzles out.
falters.
I agree
Okay.
with that. That's a really good way of putting it, actually.
Yeah.
And part of you were talking about like they reject being popular or whatever. They were not trying to write bangers. They
He's
wrote
the Phil Anselmo for Pearl Jam.
as to
To
Pantera.
Pantera.
Yeah, they were like a
He
glam
came
metal.
along, and I think Eddie Vedder kind of made it more punk, made it more straightforward. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's a good, except the first Phil Anselmo album with Pantera sucks.
That was a
Yeah.
great album.
I know you were going to say that, but you were talking about how they didn't want to write bangers or they weren't trying to like write hits and stuff, but they ended up writing a bunch of bangers, and one of them is Black, and the record labels, we're gonna make that a single, and they're like, do not make Black a single.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it's just like too vulnerable and stuff. Which is, what's funny about this? I mentioned that it's like this has come back to me multiple times. The first time I heard Black, I'm like, this shit is hot, bro. I'm like,
This
Yeah,
is your getting busy music.
yeah, dude. I have like girls over or whatever, and I'm like fumbling through my CDs. I'm like, Deicide, that's probably bad. Cannibal Corpse. I'm like, oh, Pearl Jam. Girls like Pearl Jam. I put this on. It has like a sexy vibe on it, but I'm not reading the lyrics.
The fact that you're like Eddie Vedder's sexy time.
Oh, for sure. Oh my God, chicks love Eddie Vedder, bro.
He's a cool dude.
And that has happened multiple times when I rediscover it at like points when I'm like single or whatever, and it's like a fire album for that, which is kind of shitty to say in some way because I think it's deeper than that as opposed to just like some fuck CD.
I also feel like this album,
Because there's like a lot of, sorry to interrupt you, but there's like a lot of different, I'm looking at the songs, there's like a lot of different vibes going on
there
here.
is, and that's one of my notes. Is like there's really good pacing throughout this album, but it also at the same time has a few falters where there's like this up down where the song will be going really good, and then it gets to like this weird part, and you're just like, okay, get to the point. Like what just happened? We lost all momentum, all tempo.
The mood changes, yeah. Well, it's almost like
They be
interludes.
jamming, man.
Yeah, kind of.
There's
But-
like, you know what I mean? Like they'll have a song that's kind of an emotional banger, like Jeremy, and then they'll kind
I
of
can't
chill.
stand that song.
Is it because it's overplayed?
I think it's overplayed.
This whole album is like, I mean, every song on this is played on the radio. At some
Probably,
point.
Yeah,
but
all of
I
them.
feel like
Crab is like,
I feel like so this when we were kids, this was in pretty heavy rotation
Oh, big
around our
time.
group of friends and stuff, and so
Yeah.
it kind of fit the lifestyle or the mood of the life we were living at the time.
Well, we would put on albums and
with like a lot of angst and like a lot of just like not caring and just kind of like going through.
but this album was
you
like
and
not.
everybody's, you
But
and all
this-
your friends are going through divorced parents and shit like that.
Yeah,
you
like
know?
that kind of weird like vibe, where
Well,
like
and then you pick this up when you're going through your own divorces, and as an adult, you're like, I get it.
It comes
At a deeper
back to
level,
back.
I get it.
but
more
like
than once.
but like coming back to it after this because I hadn't listened to it in a long time, and I was surprised. Like I was marking all the songs that I like, and I think I marked every song on here except for Jeremy and Release.
Really?
Those are the two of the best songs.
I like Release.
You like Jeremy?
So Jeremy, so I put this album away for a while,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it comes back. So when I listened to this for this show,
Mm-hmm.
I just like put it on and just sat there and listened to it. That's what I usually
Yeah.
do. But I hadn't done this with Pearl Jam in a long time, since like the 90s.
Okay.
Because back then,
Yeah,
you
and that's about the last time I listened to it.
but I would listen to it over and over
I
again.
hear
But I was
songs every
doing
once in a
other
while.
stuff, you know what I mean? And Jeremy fucked me up, bro.
Really?
Dude, I could not. Fucked me up. It was just like, it's so upsetting because I feel like everyone can relate to it in some way.
It's
Like,
kind of based on a true story.
I know, but
about it.
like, you're either Jeremy or you're one of the kids in the classroom, and you've been both, or you know what I
Yeah.
mean, or
But
the
also
teachers.
with-
Is this because
Sorry.
you got bullied when you were a kid?
Everyone's gone through some sort of, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. Like,
And
it's
they
like-
just fucking nailed it, dude. It's just crazy how good they nailed it.
So this is kind of what I don't like about it, is that like, you're not just this kid or this kid, like it's okay, dude.
Do you think it's a little much?
Yeah, for sure.
Is it like Daddy on Corn? I know you don't like that song. It's like,
That just is an uncomfortable song for me.
is this uncomfortable that way, or is it?
Or is it just
I
like
think it's also kind of strange because, like, he has like his like explanations of what some of these songs are. Like obviously the one song where he's talking about how he finds out his real dad is not his real dad, it's his stepdad, and his mom is like sexually aroused by him because she reminds him of his
real
dad.
yeah.
Like what Lifetime movie are you watching?
no, dude, that was classic '90s America.
Yeah.
All the bands were
Bruce
singing about
Springsteen had a song about it too. So did Bon Jovi.
Good callback. That's funny. So it's kind of like too much of a bummer, and like it's trying to be a bummer, and
Well, see, I didn't even think it was that big of a bummer until
So
I did research and he like told me this stuff.
so was that when you were preparing for the show? Did
Yeah,
this,
for sure.
Did this?
I knew some roughly of like what some of the songs.
So that's
An
were.
always-
idea of it, but
Yeah.
So
Even
that's
Flow, I knew it was about the homeless and like, but like I don't know. I kind of think it just reminds me of like what was actually kind of selling around that time, and I do understand around that time, that generation or whatever, they were going through some shit in the 90s, you know what I mean? A lot of different things that happened,
Mhm.
But at the same time, it's like, the 90s were kind of cool too. Let's not relish in like all this like,
Well,
it kind of sucks that a lot of the music is known for being like downer music,
yeah.
when actually like there was other bands like Mudhoney that were like more like rock and roll and the Stooges, like, and they like call that grunge or whatever, but like that shit was going on and that shit was tight, like the Melvins.
Yeah,
well,
and
that's what
stuff
I like
that.
about this album, though. Like Once and Even Flown Alive, those aren't. I mean, lyrically they might be downers, but like
Tempo wise.
tempo wise.
Yeah.
And then they do shit like Oceans, which is kind of like, you're like, okay, it's a nice little interlude
I
after
do like
Jeremy.
Oceans.
And then Garden is a masterpiece
Oh, yeah,
of
it's
a
a
song.
great song.
That's my favorite song on the album. That's one I rediscovered like in 2013 or something like that. I was like, oh, I'll listen to Pearl Jam again. Then you get to Garden, you're like, I didn't
Yeah,
realize
I
how.
forgot how good this song
And
was.
then Release, I'm surprised you don't like. That's beautiful to me.
I think my problem with Release is I like the song. I just hate the transition to the hidden track.
Oh, it's
Yeah, and that's that's what ruins it.
'Cause
Like,
it
that's on
loops
my
around
note.
to the front,
Yeah,
yeah.
I hate the hidden track thing. Like the hidden track to me was done in excess in the '90s, I mean,
Oh, for
everybody was doing
sure.
it, but I feel like the loop around back to the beginning of it.
Only
just-
some bands did it, like,
Yeah,
well.
yeah, I think
Nine Inch
Offspring did it
Nails
well.
and Offspring did it really
Nine Inch
good.
Nails did it well.
Green Day Dookie, dude.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they were just separate things. But
Bush on 16 Stone had a good hidden track as well.
I don't know. I never listened to that album.
I did not get into that either.
That is definitely on one. Yeah.
So with that said, Nathan, what would you give it for a rating?
I give this a 4.5.
Okay,
I think they're nostalgic songs. I think the fact that a generation of people bonded with this, like almost everybody knows this record, is so awesome and so lame at the same time.
Well said.
And also, like,
facts.
Eddie Vedder, I'm more of a fan of that than the music, just because the music, honestly, some of the chord progressions and some of the stuff that's going on is very mediocre. To me, mediocre, like, not, their playing is great. But
It's
like
just very cookie cutter.
Very cookie cutter. It's like I've heard
Okay.
this in almost every 60s band, 70s, like, but it's a good album and everyone should listen to it.
So I don't agree with Nate. I give it 4.6.
Oh,
Kind of same thing. It's an iconic 90s album. I don't agree with the grunge thing. I think, like Nate said, this is classic rock with a grunge twist. Eddie's voice and vocal performance are always really good. I think maybe the actual post-production additions and stuff are kind of what made it sound really muddied up at some times. But other than that, I mean, it's great. It's one of those iconic albums that you just, when
like if
listen
you
back to
hate
it-
this, like I'm kind of like, I'm probably not gonna want to eat some wings with you.
well,
You're
if
like 10 is like the worst album ever. I'm gonna be like,
So Matt, what do you think?
Pearl Jam 10 is a 5 out of 5.
I thought you were gonna do that, dude.
This album is so impactful. It has so much emotional range. I mean, if you want a sexy song, it's on here. If you want something that's going to uplift you and make you feel good, it's on here. If you are feeling bad about yourself, there's a song on here for you. And
That's
I really, really like that they weren't trying to write like a banger album, and they did anyway. They caught lightning in a bottle, and then every album after that, like Versus is good, Vitology is good, but they're not as good as the one before. So it just, that spark has just fit for me as a Pearl Jam fan. I stopped listening like into the 2000s.
Yeah.
We are Blenderstyle. That was Pearl Jam 10. Let us know what else we should review in the comments. Like and subscribe and all that YouTube garbage. Share with your friends. Apparently it works the algorithm. I don't give a fuck about the algorithm.
Wow, Matt, 5.0, huh? You think you lost your virginity to this?